Hello and welcome to Plus Sports on Plus TV Africa. My name is Mikhail Tinubu. Welcome on the show. It's Tuesday morning and I'm joined by my friend and colleague Wale Agbede. Welcome on the show, Wale.
Good morning, Mikhail. Great to be here with you.
Thank you. I want to talk about the way the football world is about to change. Some people may not understand what I'm about to say, but when you harken back to when David Beckham went to MLS, it shifted the conversation about the perception of the MLS, and to the degree that even now, when a legend, a major legend, one of the greatest players that has ever played the game, chose to move to the Middle East, the conversation and the argument some people were making about whether he is finished or not is that why didn't he just go to the MLS? The MLS is now considered a good enough league that if you're going to retire, or if you're going to still be considered within the conversation of football stratosphere, then the MLS is still a quality league to go to. I'm speaking, of course, of Cristiano Ronaldo, who is set to play in Saudi Arabia for the first time since joining Al Nassr, after he was named as captain of Riyadh ST11. For an exhibition match against Lionel Messi's Paris Saint-Germain. Officials announced on Monday, January 16th, the 37-year-old Portuguese forward will lead the team made up of players from Saudi sides Al Hilal and Al Nassr against Messi's PSG in what will be the latest chapter of their celebrated global football rivalry. The lineup also features Saudi international Salem Al-Dawsari, who scored in the shock group stage win over Argentina in last year's World Cup, and Saud Abdul Hamid, the highly anticipated showdown, which reportedly had more than 2 million online ticket requests, will take place in Riyadh on Thursday, January 19th. The bidding for a VIP Beyond Imagination ticket to the match has already topped 10 million rials. That is $2.66 million in auction that is set to end today. Ronaldo missed the first two domestic games for Al Nassr after being suspended by England's Football Association for knocking a phone out of a fan's hand in April. He arrived at the Saudi team earlier in January on a deal until 2025, estimated by media to be worth more than 200 million euros. Ronaldo is set to make his first competitive appearance in the Saudi Pro League on Sunday, January 22nd, when Al Nassr host Al Ettifaq. Again, to my point, David Beckham in 2006, I believe.
2003.
2003.
2007, I beg your pardon.
He left Real Madrid at a time when he was still at the height of his abilities. He still played for a number of years and went to AC Milan later after leaving MLS, then PSG, before calling it time. But he took such a significant pay cut. It was a £75 million, 75% pay cut compared to what he was receiving at Real Madrid. Now, we could talk about his falling out with Capello back then, but going to MLS, having the deal that he had, changed the perception of the MLS. Since then, we've had Rooney go to the MLS. We've had Frank Lampard go to the MLS. And even people had the conversation about Ronaldo maybe rekindling his season if he went and spent some time in the MLS, away from the critics of European media, and then maybe he could find his way back to contention for the national side, maybe even still make it back to play 1 or 2 more seasons in Europe. He chose Saudi Arabia. Some people have accused him of choosing it for monetary reasons, but I think he's about to do for Saudi Arabia what David Beckham did for the MLS.
Well, I think that it's left to be seen, right? The kind of impact that it has. One of the princes of Saudi Arabia and also one of the owners of the club in the unveiling was saying, look, we are trying to, so in Saudi Arabia, right? in recent years, they have an obesity problem. Young kids are refusing to participate in sporting activities. They're refusing to participate, to pay attention to fitness. And they hope that someone who is a global icon for fitness, for taking care of your body, and all of those things will come and have a sort of ripple effect on the general populace, right? On the next generation that are coming. And to them, they almost feel like, well, if that's the effect he has, then fantastic. It's been a good deal. On the football side, I agree with you. Players of this stature move into a new league, a league that isn't as popular, and they come in and create that heightened sense of the perception of the league, right, increases. But I've been telling people that it isn't guaranteed, because you go to China. I mean, the MLS is a very easy example with David Beckham, with Rooney, obviously, a couple of other players. Frank Lampard also played in New York Football Club. But in China, we've seen something like this before, where about a decade ago, Chinese clubs were splurging a lot of funds to bring in players, Jackson Martinez, Hawk. In fact, they took Oscar from Chelsea at the age of 25, whilst he was in his prime, in a year before he World Cup, right? Half of those clubs who were spending those monies at the time are not even existing anymore, because the finances have drained. I don't think that's going to happen with Saudi Arabia, right? But I'm just saying that it didn't necessarily make the Chinese league more popular. Now you bring in the question of, say, was any of those players as big as Ronaldo? Clearly, none of them, right? So I'm just saying that we don't know exactly how it's going to pan. And I agree that some players might find it more interesting to go to Saudi Arabia, but I still think that the general feeling around this Ronaldo move, even amongst football people, is that it's all about the money.
Well, I wanted to, first of all, about the Chinese situation. I remember there was a law passed in China that limited the ability of these clubs to continue to splurge the way they were doing. And China seemed to walk away from the idea of sports washing their image, something that the Middle East, Saudi Arabia, Qatar, aren't seemingly interested in doing currently. The government is fully behind the idea of their clubs splurging. And we've even heard of the reports of Al Hilal offering Messi almost twice the amount of money that Ronaldo is going to be paid. But one thing about the perception about Ronaldo, to me, it seems like in Europe, there has been such a disrespect for who he is, what he has accomplished, that the rest of us in the rest of the world don't quite understand the disregard, the disdain. A list came out recently about the all-time greatest players to ever play the game. Of course, we all knew that even before the World Cup started, that if Messi won the tournament, he was going to be rated as the greatest player of all time by most pundits. But once that was done, the list that came out put Ronaldo so far below Messi that it's like Ronaldo and Messi haven't been competing for the last 15, 16, 17 years at the very top, longer than any player in the game has done so. I feel like it's the idea about whether Ronaldo has chosen Saudi Arabia for simply monetary reasons, given how competitive we know he is, then I feel like it's all down to disrespect. What do you think?
Well, I mean, Mukal, $200 million a year is a lot of money.
Yeah, right? Of course.
I mean, I don't think that we can pull that down to just disrespect. But I think that, I mean, like he mentioned in his interview with Piers Morgan, he felt disrespected at Manchester United, for instance. I mean, so that's one feeling that we know for sure.
And the English media certainly blamed him from the moment he walked into the Manchester United squad as the reason the rest of the squad wasn't doing well. Even in the season where he scored 24 goals in all competitions as a 37-year-old.
Yeah, fair enough. But, I mean, for a player at that level who has achieved as much as he has had his fair share of criticism. At the Santiago Bernabeu, where he helped them win 5 Champions League titles, he was booed at the Santiago, right? It comes with the terrain. You know, when Lionel Messi was booed at Paris Saint-Germain, being the present World Player of the Year, right? So I think that these players at this level, I don't think that distance.
But
I don't think distance should get to them as much as.
But you will admit that unlike every other moment in his career, every other moment in Messi's career, where both of them have had fans in the match boo them. That was one match every now and then. But over the course of months, the articles that were being written, the punditry that was being given about his contribution to the squad. I look at Haaland's situation, for example. We saw the match against Manchester United. When Haaland wasn't scoring in that game, he was nowhere to be found. In fact, Pep Guardiola, post-match, came out and said that Haaland needs to contribute more to the squad, to the way the play is developed. Ronaldo was being criticized as a player who could only have any impact when he scores. Meanwhile, Haaland walks into the squad of Manchester City, a squad that creates more chances than any other team in the league, and doesn't have more than 20 touches in a game, and he scores every time the ball is sent creatively into the box. And yet, every one of those pundits were fawning all over him.
Yeah, but so here's the difference, right? United were winning games. City were winning games. I use were because the sort of mini slump that City are in right now, there's been a lot more focus on Haaland's role in the team. I mean, you are mentioning it. There's a lot more pundits mentioning it that, look, is Haaland really taking this team backwards slightly? Is he affecting the performances of the other players around him? Maybe, maybe not. It's a subjective conversation, right? But there's now more focus on it because City aren't winning. So I don't think that there was any specific victimization of Ronaldo. My opinion at the time of Ronaldo was not to blame Ronaldo as a person. He was contributing his quota. I mean, he was a 37-year-old. I didn't expect him to press the ball like maybe Gabriel Jesus would at Arsenal or maybe Julian Alvarez at City, because he doesn't have the body to do it anymore, right? I don't expect him to play on the wing and dribble players like he used to do at Manchester United in his first stint. So I blame the coaches, right? Who didn't tailor their game around his abilities. Because, I mean, in as much as he was 37, he was still the best player in the team. But it doesn't change the fact that his deficiencies were affecting the Manchester United side. Now, were the criticisms exaggerated? Maybe. But I'm saying that those slight exaggerations, I don't think are enough, I mean, from the media now, to say that's why he went to Saudi Arabia. I think that he wanted to stay in Europe.
But you don't think in a season where he had just lost his newborn baby girl?
Oh, I totally agree with all of those. I mean, even in his interview, I was one of those who thought that he did make a lot of sense in the interview with Piers Morgan, because
I mean, people seem to accept that everything he said about the Manchester United board, the way he was being treated, was all true. But the qualms people seem to have was him being a player who was still under the employment of Manchester United, coming out and saying these things. But I do want to get back quickly to the Saudi Arabia, what he has to offer this squad. Even if we accept, and we all do accept, that the Saudi Arabia League is in mostly, at best, its infancy. It's not on the level of European leagues anywhere. Is he still capable, even with all of the questions that have been raised about his ability to press, his ability to play at the very top of the game? If all things being equal, can he improve the squad he is walking into?
Clearly, easily. I mean, I think that there are many clubs in Europe that he still has the ability to improve. Not to talk of going to Saudi Arabia, So I think definitely the answer is yes. He improves our answer.
If now that Ronaldo seems like he's happier because he's smiling more, he's away from the glaring lights of European media, if he suddenly goes on, even though they're going to say his goals are worth less than they were in Europe, if he goes on to have a credible season, maybe 6 months, if he goes to have a credible 6 months, scoring, maybe assisting 10, 15 goals, contributions, not goals he scores alone, would you say that he is still worth the new Portugal manager keeping an eye out on for, given that he is going to be playing in Saudi Arabia?
Yeah, well, I mean, absolutely. I think so. But according to what Roberto Martinez said when he was appointed last week, he said he's going to have a conversation with Ronaldo, right? But what role is he going to be playing in the team? Is he going to be a guaranteed starter? I don't think he has to be. Doesn't mean he should be cut out of the squad. If he still has the hunger to play for the team, if he still has the desire to represent his country, then he should be given a chance. He still has the ability. But there are younger players who deserve a chance. Goncalo Guedes, Andre Santos, Joao Felix, all of those guys. As long as Ronaldo is still locking around the first team, at 38, it doesn't send a good message to them in terms of opportunities, right? I don't think Ronaldo is going to lead them to the next World Cup because he'll be 42. Even the next Euros, he'll be 40. So, I mean, most likely, it is these guys who are going to be spared in the attack at that competition. So you have to begin to give them the confidence now that we can trust you to start games, right? So, but the question is, will Ronaldo be willing to take a back seat? At Manchester United, we've seen that he probably won't be, right? And secondly, back to your point about him leaving the praying eyes of the European media and all of the lights and glamour of European football. My counter opinion would be, don't you think he will miss it? I think that Ronaldo is someone who revels in the spotlight. He's someone who wants to be in the eyes of the media. I mean, he would rather if it was positive, right? When he's winning Ballon d'Ors and winning Champions League titles and league titles, he would rather that, right? But he almost comes off like someone who likes to be in the face of the media. So going to Saudi Arabia, where the average attendance in the biggest stadiums is 8,000 per game, right? And he's not even in the biggest club in Saudi Arabia, right? Al Hilal are the biggest club in Saudi Arabia. I think, and I'm just assuming because we don't know, that when the old euphoria of his move to Saudi Arabia dies down and he plays 2, 3, 4 games, right? And the attendances go back to, say, maybe 12,000, right? I think he's going to miss it.
Probably, but I do think Ronaldo is the kind of player who is, throughout his career, has been a self-motivating individual. Limelight or not. Once upon a time at Manchester United, his first stint, he was a showboat. And goal scoring was secondary on his mind. It was until the likes of Ryan Giggs, Neville, Ferdinand made it clear that output is what dictates success. Understandably, you might be right about the euphoria of moving to Saudi Arabia washing away, but the fact is, articles are still being written about him. So the media will probably follow him, probably to a lesser degree, but will follow his antics, his performances
Successes
in Saudi Arabia.
And or failures.
And given that Ronaldo is such a global superstar brand, there is the likelihood that we might see a stadium that is more fully packed than that 8,000 attendance.
Yeah, I agree, but do you think it's going to double?
It could. I mean, we've already seen what's going on
maybe
online.
Maybe in the big games. I think Al Hilal Al Nassr will be a proper. I mean, we'll probably see packed stadiums. But against the smaller teams, I mean, there are some clubs in Saudi Arabia whose ground can only take 4,000.
All right. Thank you, Wale. It's been a pleasure having you on the show. My name is Mikhail Tinubu. Thank you for joining us on Plus Sports on Plus TV Africa. Remember, life is never boring with some sports. Have a wonderful day.